Hello folks, welcome back to the Aussie shed. Another little job I'm doing here on the Fairlady. I'm in the process of mounting the ECU. This fella right here. And where the ECU mounts in this vehicle is in the passenger side front floor. Now when I pull the old ECU out, which is this guy up here, it had been mounted very poorly. Well, actually it hadn't been mounted at all. It was just thrown into the space where the ECU normally sits with a big tangled rat's nest of wires and left in there to bounce around to its heart's content. Now, as you probably know, I'm not happy with that. That's just not the way you do stuff. So now that I've got the new wiring loom to a point where I actually know where everything is, I've currently got the loom in place, and the tail and all the connectors that run up to the ECU are all sitting in there. I thought, well, I might as well have a bit of a look at the space that I've got there and just see if I can mount it in. Initially I was hoping that I would just be able to screw the ECU onto the floor of the area, just like the factory ECU does, but the factory ECU obviously has kind of shaped brackets, I would assume, on the bottom of it so that it mounts onto this piece because it's not flat. So we'll head into the car and I'll give you a bit of a look at what I'm dealing with. So that's basically the area that we're dealing with there, folks. You can see it's in the passenger side footwell floor. There is a panel that goes over that sits on this flat ledge here and over on this side to keep your feet off it and everything like that. And obviously where I'd like to mount the ECU is kind of in this position here. But there isn't really a flat enough area to get screws into and to mount it properly. You know, it's all rocky and all that sort of stuff. Plus, you know, things like this down in this corner here, there's, because of the shaping in this base section, there's a recess in there behind it. So what I'd ideally like to do is make up a new platform that sits on here first, something that mounts there and gives me a dead flat piece to mount this guy onto. So that's what I'm doing there on the bench, folks, is I'm about to make a piece that I can now mount here, which gives me a flat platform to mount the ECU onto. So let's head back to the bench. So what I'm going to make this out of, folks, is this piece that I've got here. Now this is a bit of stainless of unknown specification. It's, gee, how thick is it? Let's have a bit of a look. It's about 1 mil thick. Yeah, maybe 0.8, 1 mil, somewhere around that. All these holes punched in it. Very randomly, by the way. When I looked at it initially, I thought, oh yeah, but if you're a careful eye, you'll notice that these holes are on angles and some of them are in and out. They've been done quite randomly. Looking at it now, it looks like they've been done by hand. This was part of a unit that I bought to build a little smoker for a mate of mine out of. It was a big Chinese sort of a portable oveny thing, and basically it was a piece of junk, but it had a lot of good raw material there. So I used all the stainless material that was in it to build something else. This was left over. And as I do with a lot of stuff, I just throw it in the corner of the Aussie shed till the time comes where I'm possibly going to use it, or may throw it out, or never use it at all, who knows. But I tend to collect a lot of stuff for this reason, folks, just so I'm not constantly going out and buying things. So I've dug that out and I've tried to re-square it as best as possible, but it is still quite a bit wonky. But what I'm going to do is put a couple of bends in this and see how it's going to work out for me to mount up onto the floor in there. So I'll bend this up and I'm going to bend the sides down and then back so it's got like a little foot on it, so it gives it a bit of a standoff of 10-15 mil, just so we don't get this kind of action going on between this plate and the plate that's already there, just through vibration of the vehicle. So I can quite firmly bolt it down on, say, 4 points and then mount the ECU onto it. So that's what I'm doing, folks. I've already got it cut out just with a grinder. I'm just going to clean this up and then I'm going to put a couple of bends in it which is going to be the tricky thing. I'm either going to use my hydraulic bender in the press, or it means I've got to set up my little sheet metal bender. But I might be able to, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'll clean it up first and I'll have a bit of a think about it. I'll be back. Alrighty. I've just been under the car, folks, and I've marked the positions where I'd like the tabs to be, where the little feet are going to sort of go down off it to mount onto that floor panel. See, that's there here. And what I've also done is I've marked a line along the top down about 5mm on the places in between those tabs. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to cut these sections out of the centre of each of the tabs, which will leave this little lip down on here, which will give strength to this top by having that that corner on the edge there. And then I'll be left with just the tabs, which I can then bend up and sit in position. I also have to cut the top off this, and once I'm sure it's all sort of right, I'll put a couple of riv nuts in this that I can bolt the ECU to, and I'll mark the tab positions on the floor and possibly put a couple of riv nuts in that floor panel, so the whole unit will bolt together very nicely and kind of be nice and strong. But it's actually raining cats and dogs outside at the moment, folks. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it on the audio. So I'd normally take this outside and cut it, but yeah, I'll see. I'll see, folks. If the rain holds up for a second, I'll take this outside and cut it with a grinder, because I've just got a lot of stuff in the shed at the moment that I don't want to get covered in kind of grinder dust. That over there in particular, folks, because it's everything's nice and clean under there at the moment. I've got a lot of stuff that I really just don't want to get grinder dust on. So anyway, bear with me. You'll either see me cut it, or you'll see it when it's already cut. I'll be back. So that's looking pretty reasonable, folks. Still in the rough stages, of course, but you can see by bending this edge down all the way around in between these little tabs, it's actually very strong now. It doesn't just flex like a piece of sheet metal, you know, now that the edges are done. So all I've got to do now is bend these tabs out and just check it, and we'll see how it looks then. That's not bad. Not too bad at all. Alright. I might just take these corners off, folks. On these guys now. Just whip these little corners off just to make it look a little bit fancier. And clean it up, get rid of all the Sharpie marks, and maybe sit it in position and have a little bit of a look at it all and see how it's going. Alrighty, that's starting to look the part now, folks. Couple of holes in it, ready to be mounted, just so that I can now move it into the car and mark through these with a pen and get a position on that that plate that's already there. So yeah, it's starting to do the business, folks. I think that'll be quite fine. let's take this to the car, get some marks on it. Right folks, unfortunately I can't work and hold the camera in here at the same time because there's nowhere to mount it and there's not really enough space, and I'm very wobbly holding things in my hands because I'm an old man. But I've got Sharpie marks in 4 points, and we've got our obviously not flat surface there to mount the ECU on, and then when we mount that in, we'll have our nice flat surface for the ECU to sit on, and everything should be just oh so good. And I'm just tossing up whether I'm going to screw this in with some tech screws or riv nuts. Don't know. This Haltech ECU here, it's just held in with tech screws, these guys here, but it is a reasonably thick little bit of plate there, so we'll see. I think I might go for tech screws. I'll go and see what I've got. They're just easy. Alrighty. Right folks, we're nearly at the finish line now. I've just installed 4 M5 riv nuts in this to mount the ECU onto our mounting plate that we've made, and these holes have been marked inside as you just previously saw, and they are pre-drilled and ready to fit some nice little tech screws, which I've only just noticed. Probably not going to see this on this crappy focusing camera, but they have a nice little Z on the head of them. Isn't that fitting? Oh my god. So anyway, I'm about to test fit the ECU onto this and just make sure that all the holes have worked out right and it's all going to go in kind of nice and all that sort of thing. And we'll just see how it goes, eh? So far so good. Oh yep, we lined up pretty good. Only one of them felt like it was grabbing a little bit of an edge there, but only just very slightly. Alright, that's pretty good. Right, well that's pretty neat folks. So that's our ECU mounted on our plate that we've just finished making up. And as you can see, that's all, you know, looking pretty good. It doesn't look obscenely homemade or anything like that, so I think that's pretty good. So what I'll do now folks, I'll just quickly remove the ECU off the mounting bracket and we'll go into the car and we'll fit this up, and then we'll fit the ECU back onto the mounting bracket in the car. So let's head into the car, eh? And that's that folks. I think that's looking pretty reasonable. We now have this nice flat surface to mount the Elite 2500 to. That'll just mount up in there. I'll get some screws in that folks, and we'll have another look at it. There we go. I must admit, I'm pretty happy with that folks. It's not a bad sort of a setup now. Fairly factory looking in appearance in relation to the way it's done and all that sort of stuff. Super solid, no dramas at all in that regard. You know, it's not going to be rattling around. I imagine the old ECU, when it was sitting in there, the fact that it was just sitting in there and amongst all the wiring, would have been banging around through corners and over bumps and all that sort of stuff. But that should be pretty damn good. Alright, very happy with that. Let's move on to the next thing. This is the negative battery cable off the Fairlady. It's a standard twin turbo battery cable. Now the issue with this is that it was chopped off right here because it had the battery relocated to the boot, bolts on the firewall there, and it has 2 points here where it bolts onto the engine. I think one goes onto the back of the head and the other uses one of the transmission bolt holes. As you can see, there's a bit of remnants of a bit of heat management in that position there, and then there is another position here where it's held up to the firewall. That's just kind of to lift it up and hold it up over where the turbos are so it doesn't get cooked. Problem is, mate, it's already really cooked. Like, this thing is so hard, like it's just, you can't even bend it there, like there, and compared to where it should, what it should be like up here. Super flexy, so she's pretty cooked out. So I thought, yeah, no worries, I'll just get a second hand one, but it's turned out to be a bit of a pain in the bum just trying to locate one. I did manage to get what I thought was the right cable, but when it was sent to me, it only has one terminal on one end instead of the two terminals like my my twin turbo cable does. And also this top mounting lug here seemed to be in a bit of a weird position compared to mine. It looks kind of upside down and back to front, so I don't know what the go was with that, but I couldn't really use it. So that left me in a little bit of a pickle, folks. So what I've decided to do is make up my own battery negative ground cable. And the reason I didn't do that right from the start, folks, because it's really easy to crimp up cables, is these guys here, okay? That's called a flag terminal. Obviously, I guess that looks like a little flag if you hold it up that way, but I found it impossible to get hold of any of these. All of the automotive electrical supply places that I use don't carry them. They only carry kind of general, you know, these type of things, you know. And they carry 90s, as in bent up 90 degrees that way and stuff, but no one seems to carry these flag terminals, and it's just been really driving me up the wall. So I thought, well, bugger it, I'm just going to make some, and then I'm going to make my own cable. So this is what I've done, folks, which begs the question, what am I going to make them out of? So searching through the Aussie Sheds collection of fine raw materials, I managed to come across this copper sheet here, 2mm. I thought, yep, that'll do fine. The factory stuff is about 2mm, and it seems to be brass of some kind, hence the yellowy colour compared to the orangey colour of what I have here. Either is suitable. This is probably a little bit stiffer, this may be a little bit softer, but this is still fairly hard, you know. It's not annealed or anything like that. So I thought, okay, well, how can I make some of these flag terminals up? So all I did, I cut a piece of sheet off, this stuff here, just on the bandsaw, just marked it off the end and cut it off, 20mm thick. And then I set about just rolling it around this bolt here, just using my bench vise and a few hammers and bits and pieces. And this is what I've ended up here with, folks. That's one of my finished flag terminals there. They're crimped on using the bench vise. They're crimped very hard. There's no way they're coming loose or coming off. And here's one down at the other end. This is the heat management end of the cable. So this basically replicates this end here of the factory cable that had heat management just here. And what I've used is this stuff, folks, that you use for heat sleeving, you know, all your lines running around your turbos and that. So it's silicon coated fiberglass, the best stuff, I reckon. So I've slid some of that on, and I've actually slid it on from both sides with a split, and then I've used this this really good aluminized fiberglass tape here to sort of go over the join. And this end here has been double heat shrunk, and this end down here, basically it's just going to be cut off at that point where a new terminal goes on. So it's fully heat protected all the way from the first connection point sort of halfway up the cable. So a lot better protection than the factory cable had. And this is a nice new flexi cable. Well, it's not new, it's just one I pulled out of the stuff that I keep on the shelf here. But it's certainly, there's no issues with it. It's still nice and soft and flexible. Slightly larger in size, internally and externally to the original stuff there. But it's a very similar quality sort of a cable there. Yazaki, 1991 it says on it. So it's quite an old cable, but it's certainly in great condition. So I was doing this and I thought, here we go, I'm bloody guilty again of just doing little bits and pieces without showing you guys exactly what I'm doing. So this is how you make a flag terminal, folks. So if you're stuck like I was in a position where you couldn't really get hold of a decent earth cable, I think you can still buy these new, but like all this sort of stuff, they're frightfully expensive. So it's either good second hand or make something up yourself. And so that's where I am with it, folks. I'm just making it up myself. So I thought I'd give you a quick demo of how to make a flag terminal. Just, you know, so you guys are in the know. Alright, let's get to the vise. So I'm just using the general sort of universal vise that I've got here, folks. So this is how we're going to do it. A little bit of a balancing act at first, folks, getting it in there and not bloody squashing your fingers at the same time. Alrighty, that should be the one. Now that's in there, folks, we can start doing a little bit of shaping. Alrighty. That's our first bit. Now I'm being a bit careless here, folks. I normally have the soft jaws in the vise here, but they're a little bit more awkward to use, so I opted just to use the steel jaws, which is going to put a few marks on it, but I don't care because this is just going in the bin. Alrighty, now once we get that to that point, we can start trying to roll it over the top. Alrighty. Now, what I'll do there, folks, is I'll now just clamp that in, but just up a bit, like so. And again, we'll just hammer it down over our bolt. A little bit more. Now we're at this point, folks, we can start using the vise a little bit more to our advantage by going inside of it, like so. And there we go, folks, that's the basis of our flag terminal now. Now I was a little bit rough and ready with that because I'm just using it for a demo on the camera. So basically what you do now is you open this back up enough to get your cable in. So I'll give you a little demo here, folks. I'll cut a bit of insulation off and I'll attach it to the cable for you. Now we just run our knife around. Piece on there, get a bit of a mark, cut it that way without cutting yourself, which is always a good thing. And there you go, now we've got our bare piece of cable in the center. Okay. There we are, folks. Get that on there like that. I can give it a little bit of love with a hammer just to kind of get it where we want it, and then I'll just finish it off in the vise. So the first thing I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to clamp it in this direction, because that will squeeze it down where the joint is. Like so. Now we'll go back in this direction. And that's it, folks. As you can see, that is super clamped on there. If you wanted to be a little bit fussy about it, you could hit it across the center with a blunt coal chisel or just a piece of steel and put a little bit of a V in it, but I don't believe that that needs anything like that done to it. That is really clamped in there. And it's just a matter of drill a hole, cut the end of it off so it's all nice and fancy, and that's what you end up with, folks. So obviously you can see the proper one I've done is a bit neater, but that was just purely because of the taking my time and, you know, hurrying with this one just because it's a quick demo. But you get the idea, folks. 2mm copper flag terminals, easy as. And you can see also here with the factory terminals, they overstrip the cable as well. I assume, I don't know whether that's sort of shrunk back over the years, but this seems to be fairly oxidized looking there. Maybe it shrunk back fairly quickly on in the works, but you know, it's only an earth cable, so it's not super important. But I will put heat shrink on this, so you can see I've already got a bit of heat shrink on here, and what I'll do is I'll cut a slit in this and I'll slide it right over to about here, and then I'll slide some more heat shrink over that and I'll shrink it, and then I'll shrink this end, and that will give me a nice cover over that exposed copper there, and just sort of keep the air off it and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, folks, just another sort of a quick one. I'm not going to worry about putting a terminal on this end yet. I'll wait till I get my battery sorted out and see what size battery I'm going to run on this thing, and then I'll cut it off and do the final terminal. And the one on this end, well, you know, there's nothing to do on that. Actually, give me a second, I'll get set up with a crimper and I'll do this one with a crimper. I'll be back. Right, folks, we're all set up to crimp this terminal on. I've got a little bit of a selection of terminals here. This one's a little bit tight. This one fits on like kind of easy. Ideally you want to fit the tightest crimp over the cable that you can, just because it'll give you a better crimp in the long run. I've used a cable tie to pull back this insulation and hold it so that it doesn't get in the way while I crimp this terminal on like there. So now I just need to set it up in a comfortable position that I can crimp it without it kind of sliding off. Alrighty, so these are the crimpers that I'm using, folks. I use these for a lot of things, sort of here and there. They're not a bad crimper. Just, you know, your typical sort of bit of Chinesium stuff. They do leak a bit in the storage case, which is a pain in the bum, so eventually they're probably going to run out of hydraulic fluid. But as far as how they actually work quite reasonably. Just trying to get the orientation of the crimp right, folks. This one here bolts through this way, so I want this one too as well, because there's not enough cable on the end to be able to kind of twist it to get it to line up properly. I think that is just about right. That's pretty reasonable, folks. I think I'm happy with that. It's not going anywhere. I wouldn't think. Tiny bit of heat shrink just to make it oh so nice. Alrighty. And that Seems pretty reasonable, folks. Cut that, let that go back now. And there it is. That's that end done. And that's also that cable done. So I think we might go and throw it back onto the Fairlady and have a bit of a look at it. Alright. There it is, folks. Back in position. The fit up's good. Very happy with it. No terminal on that end. We'll wait till we get the battery in to work out where that's going to go. But overall, that's another thing just ticked off the list. And that's about all we got time for today, folks. I hope you liked the video. I hope you like the ECU mount and the new negative battery cable. Not that the negative battery cable is anything super exciting, but everything still has to be done, folks. So, yeah, if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. And as always, folks, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.